Hi folks, it's Keith, Victor Echo 3 Sierra Victor Quebec, also known as the Shaky key. What I'd like to do today is sort of wrap up some of the videos I've been doing recently where I was talking about, for new hams, why you should probably take the leap and go into a contest. And I know this is a big decision for a lot of people. This past weekend, we had a big one, probably one of the largest that you're going to see all year round. There's another one which comes up in October run by CQ magazine, but this one was one of the biggest this past weekend. Now when these big ones come up, it's hard for most of us to imagine, but a lot of these ham radio operators, they go to very remote locations just to broadcast and just to get that sort of band active and at the same time to get that call sign out there. So you tend to get stations that you would never hear normally. And I use the example of Andorra. I've never heard Andorra on. And well, we do this since '91. The first time I ever heard Andorra was on this weekend. And yes, I did speak to them. So it's a good opportunity for you when you're first starting out, and it gets you excited. And no matter what your score, you have fun. And you're going to work really hard to get a couple of stations that, for whatever reason, you want that call sign, you want that location. And for those of you that get into the habit of using, well, logbook on the air would be one of the biggest ones, collecting countries and, confirmations that you spoke to them to get various awards. This is a perfect one to go into because there are countries from all over the world on that one. And there were many on. There were a lot of Japanese. There was one from Thailand and so on. I simply couldn't get them. My equipment just wouldn't get out to them. But I could hear them way off in the distance, very, very low. So depending on where you're located, you may actually be able to get both east and west. Most of my signals went towards the east, towards Europe, down through there, down through South America. So that's where most of my contacts were. Now, I think the main thing is, a lot of people figure you need a huge radio setup and massive antennas. You don't. And we'll look at my journey, if you want, this weekend shortly, and we'll give you an idea. First off, you don't need a fancy radio. Now, the one I have now, I guess some people would call it a fancy radio when you see the front of it. It's an ICOM 7300, which is probably one of the most, if not the most popular radio out there right now. It's an amazing radio. So that's what I'm using now. But in the past, I've used an HW101. Now for most of you watching this, you probably weren't even born when that thing was made. And that was an old tube radio, and mine was made in 1972. And that was towards the end of when these things were made. And I actually competed in contests using that one. And, it just adds that little extra layer of difficulty. But you can imagine using an old tube radio in a modern day competition. Lots of people do. There are lots of people with antique equipment which go in these competitions. So the competition is what you make in it. I also used, more recently, now the HW101 was 1970s. I upgraded to one from the mid-1980s, which was a Kenwood 430S. And that was a little bit more modern. And that one I used for many, many years until last year when I replaced it with the ICOM 7300. So you don't need fancy radios. And you're going to see a lot of these operators, especially in these smaller countries and in Africa, South America, and parts of Eastern Europe, they don't have very modern equipment. And you'll see when you're actually trying to contact them and you hear them calling, they're not necessarily right on the frequency that, that it looks like. In other words, if they're on 14220, if they don't have a new digital radio, with all the letters and numbers and what have you, they may actually be on 14220.1 or 220.3. So you've got to look around a little bit to find them. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So do you need a huge antenna? Antennas definitely help. Let's not kid ourselves. The better your antenna, the better you're going to get out, the more people you can contact. But when you start off, do you need a big fancy one? No. All I have is an MFJ 1984, the MP version. It's a wire that goes out 66 feet into my backyard. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. These things. So, not difficult. Is it a complicated contest? No. I have a logging system that I got from one of the American people, and I think he's about $44 US. And he'll give you the special logging programs for a couple of dozen various competitions. So it's all done there. It's all there for you. It's automatic once you. Now this is the logging program that I'm using for the contest. This is designed specifically for this contest. So there you go. There's 3 contacts. You can see him, Echo Alpha 4 Kilo Delta. With, there's his power rating. There's the 2 others I spoke to earlier. One in France. They're both running 1,000 watts. So it's got the time, the band, and then down here, this is where you would enter the data. So very simple, very straightforward, all automated. And on this side, it keeps track of your number of contacts, your number of points you have. And, so as you're going along, you know exactly where you stand. But for those of you chasing awards like the DXCC, which is sort of the highest award, proof of talking to 100 countries, these big contests are the way to go. And, it's exciting when you first get into this and you hit a country that you've never spoken to before. And in my case, it was Andorra. I saw Andorra, I go, you got to be kidding. And yes, I did speak to them. And you know what? When it's an Arrl-1, because that's the organization that looks after the logbook of the world, all of these people, all of these contestants submit their logs almost immediately. So whereas you might speak to some country, a very rare one for you, and the person never bothers to confirm it, when it's a competition, they all confirm it. All these big stations confirm because they want the points. So we're going to look at how I did. Normally I go in this, and even this one was sort of for fun. When I go in previously, normally I would get somewhere between 35 and 45 contacts, which, for me was fine. It would work out somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 points in most cases. I changed the radio and I changed the antenna this year. And this year, 154 contacts and 44,814 points, which for me was absolutely amazing. Will I win anything? Probably not, but I have the satisfaction of knowing that I did really well, and that for my station and my setup, we did well. So it's a good test of your equipment, and you're going to see from the video here, you'll see, my radios, you'll see a little bit with a few clues and a little bit about what I'm talking about with the number of countries and the different countries that are on. Now this is a spotting page where it shows you some of the countries that are on right now. And most contests you're not allowed to use them, and we're not using it for that purpose. What I want to do is just show you some of the countries here, because you're going to be very surprised. Let me just get my pointer down. So there we are. So there's Japan, another Japan, there's Mongolia. Come down here, there's Guam. So there's a lot of Asian countries on this particular frequency right now. There's Australia, just showed for a second. There's another Australian. There's Cuba. So lots of different countries that take part in these contests. This will give you an excellent idea here as to what I'm talking about. The green you see, those are all radio stations, people calling. And you can see the strength of their signals down below. So in the dark blue down below, you have different colors. If it's a blue, sort of a light blue, well, that's a fairly small station, probably running 100 watts. As you get up into the darker colors, into the reds and the orange and so on, they're generally running around 1,000 watts. But it gives you an idea how many people are out there right at this moment. Now, things to keep in mind when you're looking for a station, we sort of, if you have these digital screens, we're looking very precise. So 388.00, 388.5, you see a lot of Europeans and South Americans on sort of that half number. It's not always the same. There's a lot of people out there that don't have don't have radios with a digital screen, and they have a dial they're turning. So if you think they're going to be on 388.00, they may not be. They may be slightly to the side. We'll see if I can find one and show you.
November Whiskey 8, uniform, 59 kilo. Thank you. Ending Bravo.
So there's one there. He's slightly off frequency, and you can get him just that tiny bit clearer at that point there. So never stop just because someone's a little fuzzy. Move your dial around and look for him. Now this happens to be a station over in Poland. Now you notice on that one his answer was 59 kilos, so 59, 1000 watts. Victor Echo 3 Sierra Victor Quebec. Thank you very much. You're 59 Oscar November. Now when we talk about the exchange, for those who are new at this, you notice the exchange that he and I did there. He was 59 100 and I was 59 Oscar November. So the 59 Oscar November simply means 59 ON, of course the abbreviation for Ontario. In this particular contest, he has to give his power. So he is 59 100. So he's running 100 watts, basically the same as I was when I went to him. I probably would not have gotten it to him last night, but tonight I can. So there's what we talk about exchange. And the exchange you need is always shown in the rules and on that some of the calendar sites where they put all these contests, they usually give the exchange. So if you're doing it for the first time, you know exactly what you have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video and got a few tips and pointers out of it, because that's really the reason for doing these, is to help you out. There are other contests coming up. There's lots of them. I mean, if you go into some of the contest pages, you'll see there's contests every single weekend somewhere in the world, and lots of these QSO parties, which are almost like a state contest. Lots of them too, if you're trying to get your work to all states. So they are fun, and I hope down the road we'll see you in one of these contests, and who knows, maybe we'll get a chance to contact each other. Victor Echo 3 Sierra Victor Quebec, wishing you a great day.